We are definitely cognizant of time. We're going to go ahead and get started. We want to welcome everybody to our second segment of the Signet of Truth. Today, we're going to dive into some more leadership stuff. Remember, the constant theme for this podcast is education and leadership, and not in any particular order. We're going to continue to beat that drum. Today is Leaders Search for the Lost Truth. So we're going to dive right into this. You guys can definitely answer in the chat. Greg is monitoring the chat. If you got a burning question, feel free to interrupt. Not a big deal. We'll not be hurt at all by that. All right, leaders, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Again, the Signet of Truth, Dr. Pace and myself, companion Dr. Randall. We're going to continue this educational journey with you guys, and let's get started. All right. So as we talked about at the beginning, the topic is Leaders Search for the Lost Truth. Now, that is a very wide topic, but we're going to narrow it down for you. We're just going to introduce some of the themes here shortly. I kind of have them in a disjointed order, but wanted to go over the, go ahead, Dr. Willis. Yeah,
you got it. It was the high speed gray screen was on there. We good, sir. Go ahead.
Oh, I got you. Let me do this real quick though, because some reason this got all disjointed. There we go. There we go. Yeah, your hand's still up, so you want to put your hand down. So, all right, let's get it. So our companion learning objectives, our CLO. So for my educators, you got your student learning objectives. We got the companion learning objectives. Today, we're going to identify key themes in Royal Arch narrative that parallel the modern leadership search for rediscovery of truth. We're going to explain humility. Now, that might be a little touchy subject, and I'm going to take you back to the end of the apprentice degree, but don't get scared. We all need to go through that humility and present strength and leadership of trust. We're also going to analyze the Zerubbabel slightly, give you some context in the background of the rebuilding of the Second Temple and his leadership and the things that drove him and made him the great leader that he was. And then we're going to evaluate the role of continual learning and self-reflection, maintaining integrity, authenticity as a leader. Those two things are very powerful in and of themselves, and we'll dive into that. Then we're lastly going to apply the principles in seeking truth, not convenience. Truth, not convenience. And there's a difference. We'll dive into that as well. The real world leadership challenges within our organizations, our chapters, lodges, what have you. Now, we can't do anything without first invoking the blessings of the deity. So we're just going to dive into the truth. What does the Bible tell us about truth? Well, Jeremiah 17:7 said, "Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, who trusts in this Lord. He is like a tree planted by the water." Now, I want you to think about that for a second, because I'll give you some context on just that tree alone. That sends out its roots by the stream and does not fear when heat comes, for the leaves remain green, as not anxious as the year of drought, for it is not to cease to bear fruit. Now, as we look at that tree, brothers, companions alike, I really want you to take a look at that tree. I don't want you to just look at the top of the tree, but look underneath the roots. I want you to look at the roots of the tree. Now, you can come off mute and answer this question, but this is a legit question. Did you guys know that the tree grows both gravitropic and phototropic? In other words, it grows in both directions at the same time. Did anybody understand that lesson or get that lesson before? Now I'll explain.
I was aware of the roots.
Again, gravitropic and phototropic. Brothers, companions, we're like trees. We grow in both directions at the same time. The phototropic is what everybody sees. The leaves are beautiful. The bark is beautiful. The base of the tree is beautiful. That's what we want everybody to see. That's the end game, the manifestation. But understand this, the gravitropic is where we grow as leaders. If you think about it, says it's like a tree planted by the water, but under the water, those roots are growing. That gravitropic, when you're growing at the same time downward, think about the adversity, the darkness, the dampness, the rocks, the rough road that you got to go through, and then still be growing at the same accelerated rate as a phototropic. So again, we as leaders are trees. We grow both gravitropically and phototropically. Brothers, let's get into this. Now, the key theme, when we think about Royal Arch and we think about Holy Royal Arch, we're going to take this back to the basics a little bit. And as we think about Royal Arch Masonry companions, we want to uncover the lost word of truth. And it gets a little deep and it gets a little sticky, but it's vital that we understand the symbolism. Now, another question. Brothers, what is the word symbol? What does that mean? By the dictionary, what does the word symbols mean? Symbol. What is a symbol? It's a better question. Anybody can answer that. I got you, silent.
I was going to go with the person in the chat, but as we know, image that represents hidden meaning.
Yes. Sensible uses of images to express hidden meaning. So as we think about masonry in general, but more specifically, Holy Royal Arch Masonry, it is a hidden meaning of things in the Bible. Now, we as humans, let's think about us in our humanistic state. Our quest is to reclaim the forgotten and obscure understanding. So, as we think about our obscure understanding in modern leadership, and we parallel that, today's leaders must continually rediscover truth. Let me say that again. Today's leaders, whether that's organizational, fraternal, whatever, we have to rediscover truth. In other words, we have to keep learning. We have to be lifetime learners, but we also have to think about truths, about purpose of ethics, city that can become buried under profit motives. So think about that. Your authenticity can be buried under your profit motives, because a lot of times as leaders, we get in these positions, we have ulterior motives and profit motives that bury our truth. They get buried in bureaucracy. They get buried in envy. They get buried in hate. As leaders, we have to be humble. We have to have a vision. Now, as I say the word vision, I want you guys to understand this. You can't have sight without vision, and there's a difference. Sight, we think about sight in a macro view. We think about vision a micro view for sight, macro for vision. Now, when you think about your vision statement, somebody come off mute and tell me, what's a vision statement in your words? What is a vision statement?
Doctor, this companion on your vision statement is where you want the organization to go.
Okay, so that vision, that foresight, right? We're forecasting. When we're thinking about vision, and we're thinking about our vision statement, we're forecasting where we want to be. The sight is where we are right now. The vision is where we want to go. But to have those things, we have to have empathy and integrity. Uh-oh, and here we go. That's where this all gets sticky. Empathy and integrity. Integrity is doing the right thing all the time, even when nobody's looking. That's tough. That's tough. A lot of us out here are prior military, but even if you were a prior military leader, you better have some integrity, because you have to have integrity and ethics, and we'll talk about that too. But we think about the initiate. Let's think about the initiate as a transition from symbolic lodge to raw arts masonry. The raw arts journey is not just about finding something external, but it's about an internal transformation, rebuilding that spiritual ornamental edifice or your temple through your experience and reflections. And your lived experiences are vital in your growth. Right? The candidate then becomes more self-aware, spiritually mature. Modern leadership parallel, again, leadership development today often mirrors the initiatory process. Like in our development as leaders, remember, we're going through change and transition. We're hoodwinked sometimes, and then we come to light, and then we figure some things out. Now, as I stated before, humility. Matthew 5:5 said, the meek shall inherit the earth. Now, let me ask you guys this. You can either put it in the chat or come off mute and say it. What was the first lesson you learned in masonry?
I would say the first lesson we learned was to do our passion.
Okay.
Some would say patience, because we heard somebody say, let him wait.
Let him wait. Okay. Anybody else want to take a stab at it?
I concur.
You
That's
concur?
what I remember.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this. What about when we gave that left shoe in the end of the apprentice
Covenant.
degree? That was a cup, but it was to teach
Covenant.
us humility. It wasn't to humiliate us. It was to teach us humility, right? The left side of man is considered the weaker side of man. So when we gave that left shoe, we were further exposing ourselves, just like Boaz exposed himself to Cleone. Although Boaz was rich, he could have brought Bruce's hand in marriage. He gave a shoe. He gave his left shoe, as a matter of fact. So that was the first lesson we learned. Now, as we talk about humility, right, we think about as leaders, humility and perseverance, strengths, leadership, they foster organizational trust. Think about those things. If you have humility, perseverance, and strength, and that leadership continuum, it fosters organizational trust. But if we think about humility, it leans us into some of the things that are locked in this key right here, in this build trust and connection. Think about vulnerability builds truth. Again, being humble. You have to be humble to be vulnerable and be approachable. But you also, vulnerability builds empathy, not sympathy, because there's a difference. Empathy. Vulnerability promotes growth, and then vulnerability requires courage. You have to be humble. My grandpa said, hey, you ain't a real man till you cry. You got to humble yourself and come down. Remember, we're all in a level. We're on different levels, but we keep saying it over and over again. We're all in a level. Now, humility, we think about that, the foundation of trust and growth. Humility allows leaders to recognize that leadership is not being right, but about getting it right. Let me say that again. Humility allows leaders to recognize that leadership is not about being right. You're not right all the time. And you'll see here shortly when we get into the slide with Nelson Mandela, but it's about getting it right. That's a humble leader. Humble leader is open to feedback. Oh, and here we go again. How can I be in charge of something and I can't take constructive criticism? How can I be in charge of something if I can't take freaking constructive criticism? I'll never grow as a leader. My organization will never grow, and that culture will be fractured. But when I'm able to take constructive criticism and open feedback, then I have to acknowledge my own mistakes. I have to get out my own way, right? And I have to bury my behaviors and humanize myself to be at a level where we can all learn and grow together. But what does that do? That encourages openness and collaboration. Let me say it again. That humility, getting out of my way, humanizing myself as a leader encourages openness and collaboration. When leaders admit that they don't have all the answers, the team member feels empowered to contribute. Woo, Lord, preach. If you think about that statement, right? When a leader admits they don't have all the answers, they stand up there and they're vulnerable. We talked about vulnerability. The team feels empowered to contribute. And guess what that does? It fosters a organization of trust. And once you build that trust, we're finding that truth now, right? But a true leader promotes continuous learning. You have to be a lifetime learner. If you've got to the point, I know we got some past grandmasters on here, we got some esteemed brothers on here, but I can guarantee you that they never thought that they had to stop learning. They had to continue to learn. As you go higher, you have to learn more, because you're going to see when we get to the slide with Nelson Mandela, your leadership should be in a different position than you thought. But as I digress, promotes continuous leading. Humble leaders are lifelong learners. They listen deeply, active listening, gentlemen, active listening. They remain teachable, right? Lifetime learners, and they adapt to strategies based on evidence rather than ego. Lord, here we go. Here we go. They adapt the strategies based on evidence rather than their own ego. This is a learning mindset. It strengthens adaptability in a rapid changing environment. Now, as promised, we're going to talk briefly about Zerubbabel, and we think about the theme and rediscovering core principles in terms of Zerubbabel and the second temple being built. And we think about rediscovering core principles as a foundation of leadership. Leadership is a continuous search for truth. So leadership, we think about leadership on a continuum. It doesn't stop. It goes right back to that adaptability and being able to be lifetime learners. Now, we think about Zerubbabel, he was a key figure in the Bible, because I tell people all the time, these are biblical characters, not Masonic characters, right? So Zerubbabel's existence can be tracked through the books of Ezra, Nehemiah, Haggai, and Zechariah. And just for a brief context on Zerubbabel, who he was considered the seed of Babylon, or more specifically stated, he was born in Babylon. His lineage was that as a descendant of King David. Okay, and we can trace this through 1 Chronicles 3:17 through 19, and Matthew 1:12 through 13. Now, his roles in Israel and his restoration roles, Zerubbabel was a governor of Judah. Persia ruled for after Babylon exile, through the Babylon and after the Babylon exile. He led the first group of Jews exiles back to Jerusalem around 538 to 537 BC. And that can be traced to Ezra 2, verses 1 and 2. Now, one of our most famous and esteemed leaders, Mr. Nelson Mandela, we're talking about integrity and authenticity as a leader. But in order to do that in the military and in life, how have we been taught to lead? From the front, right? It said lead from the front. That's all you've heard, right? Through your military career, through your upbringing in different organizations, lead to the front. But Mr. Mandela tells us a leader is like a shepherd. He stays behind the flock, letting most of the nimble ones go ahead, whereupon others to follow, not realizing that all along they're being directed from behind. In other words, what he is telling you is that he has a leadership from behind mentality. But there's two things to glean from that outside of what he says. That leaders have to, again, be humble enough to not be the one. They have to be selfless, not selfish. Let me say it again. They have to be selfless, not selfish. Leading from behind, it doesn't have to be about me. Who's ever underneath you, their successes are yours, or theirs, their failures are yours. But the second thing of that is you have to be mentally and physically strong enough to pick them up when they fall. So you're directing them from behind. So if you think about a leadership continuum, that's a different strategy of looking at leadership, right? Leaders who commit to lifetime learning, again, recognize that leadership is not a static position. Leadership is constantly evolving. It's a continuum, as we said. Knowledge, skills, insights. They must consistently deepen and stay aligned with the new realities of challenge, because the only constant in life is that things change. Things will never be the same, and we have to adapt to change. And as we have to be humble enough to say, hey, this is changing. Let me change with it as we evolve in times, because we can't solve 21st century technology with 21st century problems with 19th century technology. We just have to evolve. Of our organization suffering from that. Now, humility through learning, pursuing continuing education, fostering humility. Again, we've talked about it. I won't beat you guys up too bad on that. Now, we get into Confucius, right? Principles of seeking truth, not convenience. Now, Confucius was a Chinese teacher, as you guys can see, editor, politician, and philosopher on his dates of his existence. Now, he says that the object of superior man is truth, right? And we think about the discourse between Zerubbabel, King Darius, and the kingdom, and truth, women, or wine. The one dominant factor was truth. It wasn't wine, it wasn't women, it was truth. Now, the principle of seeking truth is not convenience. It's one of the most vital tests of moral courage in leadership. It calls leaders to pursue honesty, transparency, and ethical clarity. Leaders have to have these intangible qualities, even when doing so disrupt the comfort, tradition of your personal advantages. In other words, you got to get out your own way. Leaders, we got to get out our own way because we get so inundated in what we're doing and who we are and how we go about things that we forget to be ethically sound and be humble, right? But if we think about it in real world organizations and chapter settings, whether it's in business, education, or fraternal leadership, the principles transform the culture into one self-interest and integrity, and they share a common purpose, a common thing. And the most important reference, gentlemen, is just the Bible. It's time for questions. Thank you for your time. I told you I was like a Southern Baptist preacher. I wasn't gonna be before you long.
You don't have to be long to be effective. You know, I'm a firm believer. Y'all let me know y'all thoughts on it. You know, leadership, I like, Dr. Brown, I like the way that you framed everything about leadership, especially going back to talking about not being out front, right? Even in the military, you learn at some point, depending on where you stop at leadership, I think that, you know, leadership is formal and informal. You got formal and informal leaders, right? Sometimes the informal leader is probably just as, if not more influential than some formal leaders, right? But they all, if they're good at it, especially with the mentorship and coaching aspect of it, they all start to realize one thing, right? Is that they don't have to be out front in order to be shining, right? Because what do we want to strive to see, at least from where I have been in my lived experience? You want to see folks that take part of your kit bag, right? The things that you impart to them, and then add it to their kit bag and go take your philosophies and shine with it, right? Take it to other agencies, take it to other jurisdictions, take it to other chapters, do all of that, right? And then they start to shine. And then, but the good leader, the true leader will sit back and do one or two things. Will I sit there and say, yeah, man, and no disrespect, past Grandmaster Griffith, you know, hey, I taught past Grandmaster Griffith everything he know, right? Why would I steal his thunder like that? That's not leadership, right? Leadership is, yeah, he's doing pretty good things. I'm glad I knew him before he, right?
Yeah.
So that to me, that's how leadership is, you know, knowing that you don't have to be out front for your style, right? To impart wisdom and then watch it grow, right? And go to different places. So I like how that was framed. What's
Yes,
y'all
sir.
thoughts on some of that?
That's what and team, I definitely time in on that one because especially when we first started off, we talked about humble. You know, being a humble leader sometimes requires you to, I go ahead and be blunt, to be quiet
Yeah.
and listen to what the membership is saying so that you can better understand that. That's so when you make that decision, your decision will be a clear decision. And another one part we talked about too, we talked about a humble leader. You know, it's not that because I always tell individuals when I'm talking to them, when the first thing come out of their mouth, well, I accomplished this, well, I did this, I did that, man, they automatically turn me off because I just let me know, hey, that individual, what the rest of the statement is going to be that selfish, what you was talking about earlier, that selfish
Self-
part of it. Yes, sir.
Yes, selfless. And let me give you guys some more context on that too. And I should have went over it during then, but I saved it for the Q&A to be quite honest. My philosophy on that, and I've always told brothers in my realm, in my circles, to be part of the exclusive we and not the inclusive I. Let me say that again. Be part of the exclusive we and not the inclusive I. We got some smart ass guys that want to say there's an I in team or a me in team. The E is before it, everybody before me. So we got to just start reframing stuff and putting things in context, right? Again, the exclusive we and not the inclusive I, because me, I. Nelson Mandela told us lead from the back, but it can't be no me or I if you're leading from the back. It's got to be we and us. So just for context, just to put you guys in the right frame of mind to receive what we talked about today. So questions, gentlemen, feedback. I see some
Yeah,
chat.
being a leader is like you said, like we talk about is being okay with being wrong.
You
It's
got
okay
it.
to be wrong. If you walk
Mhm.
in with I know it all, you've left no room for growth. That's the wrong person in the room to be with. I never want to be the person that knows it all. If I'm the person who knows all the answers, please remove me from the room.
That's right.
Yeah.
I need to be
Absolutely.
humbled by somebody. So
Well, you got
yeah,
to find a bigger room, right, Coach?
Oh.
Well, sometimes the egos are gonna outshadow. Now, I would love to hear like we got Sovereign Grand Conde on here. I want to hear from one of you two, past Grandmaster Griffin. You guys have been at the highest levels of leadership and to deal with different obstacles, right? Because in life there's obstacles and opportunities. I want to know what are some of you guys' thoughts on stuff like that?
Well, sir, good evening to all. I've had the opportunity, or shall I say, the blessing of God to be able to sit over everybody in all these houses. And one thing I have always done, and I've told my membership this, the guys that's in line with me, I'm training you to take my job. So if I'm training you to take my job, I can't always be in front. You have to lead something. So therefore, I give them a task. How you do with it? Oh, I did pretty good, Grant. Okay. You did good. You did excellent. Now, you task the next person. Oh, no, I can't do that. You got to do that. No, 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 no. How are you going to take my job if I'm doing everything? You have to give the guys that's in line with you or your membership. I don't have no problem just going to a regular master mason and ask him, hey, what you think about this? And he said, well, it might be good this way, Grant. All right, let's try it your way. I tell you what, you're going to be my chairman on that committee. Can you get something together for me? I need some help. Okay, I'm going to give you some help. But that's the way you encourage. When you encourage like that, they will work for you. And like I said, I don't have no problem exemplifying my membership, the guys that's in line with me or whatever the case might be, because I'm not taking the forefront all the time. I do what I need to do. I handle business, but it's time for some of these brothers to stand up. But your whole lesson is touching on what a lot of us is going through in Maryland. And like I said, to be on this call tonight was very uplifting and it gave me some more insight in a different area. But like I said, it's always good to lead from the back. I've done it at the FBI, military, masonry, and I'm going to continue to do it because my major object is to make sure that someone can take my job, that they're just not sitting here depending on me. But I thank you for the time, sir.
Appreciate it. The power of delegation is a powerful tool as a leader, right? Because you don't have all the answers. And just like Coach Lewis was saying, if you feel like you got all the answers, then I don't need to be in that room with you because you're dangerous to yourself and everybody else around you. So, it's imperative for us as leaders, like, and I want you brothers to understand that you can learn from both good leaders and bad leaders. Take something away from both. Honestly, I think we get so caught up and bogged down in that we just want to take stuff from the great leaders. But no, what about the terrible leaders, right? They teach us a valuable lesson. They teach us honestly what not to do, but then they also teach us how to govern ourselves when there's conflict. Because in leadership, what we didn't touch on is conflict management. And we could have went deeper and deeper and deeper. We wanted to keep it just about truth. But when we get into leadership and leadership continuum, we talk about conflict management. That's pretty deep, and we have to deal with that. You got to, as a leader, you got to be prepared to deal with that. But that humility helps you be at a calm state where you can deal with that stuff. Definitely.
learn something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir. Anybody else, brothers? We do a quick lesson all the time, but we like to get into the open discussion and we have an hour time frame and we don't want to go past an hour. We got plenty of time for you guys to ask any question you want, what you thought about it. You tell me it was trash, go start over, whatever y'all want to do. Go ahead, Dr. Willis. You had your hand up, sir?
Yeah. And appreciate it. And y'all know it. And again, I'm humbled by the accolade, but y'all know we in this, and it's Sean in here. But I tell you, I wanna pose this question to you. I like what past Grandmaster / Grand High Priest Griffith has said, and Coach and everyone else. But I want to flip it a little bit because I heard you say something that has always been interesting to me. And Greg and Quinn and Stephen, all of y'all, we've all been there at some point, right? Trey, all of us, been Sovereign Grand Conahia, right? Is mentors, listening to mentors or taking advice from someone senior to you, right? I was reading this interesting quote yesterday, as a matter of fact. And it said this, it said, y'all know how it says, you always hear this one about never argue with a fool, right?
Mhm.
I think the same thing can come out when it's talking about mentorship too, because sometimes, and I'm sure all of us have done it. I think I talked to Trey about this a very long time ago, right? And me and Greg have been there, Raul. I've moved through some of the eaches with them, right? But it brought me back to this. You ever remember a time when you were coming through before we were all blessed to get where we at right now, and you just were awestruck by somebody that you considered a good mentor, right?
Mhm.
Or someone you wanted to emulate your leadership style after, only to realize they weren't the greatest mentor in the world, right?
Mhm. Oh,
You
yeah,
look back
yeah,
and you be like, why in the hell was I paying attention to that? Right.
yeah,
And so it made me think about this quote, and I wanted to get y'all thoughts on it. As you have moved through leadership, right? The quote said this. It said, be careful of taking all guidance from someone senior to you, because even fools get old.
yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
I was thinking about that. Even
That's
fools
crazy.
get old, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I've had some folks, it kind of goes right back into the lesson role. I've had some folks try and give some guidance, but it wasn't guidance for the betterment of the organization. It was more along the lines of trying to preserve something they considered their legacy, right? Which again ties into the lesson. They still wanted to do things the way they did it in 1962,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
we in
that's
2025, it has to evolve, right?
yeah,
Some antiquated thought processes just have to evolve. The companion of today is not the companion of 1962. The grand high priest of today is not the grand high priest of 1962. I'm not saying all of their strategy is wrong. There is credence and respect in wisdom of learning through living, but it doesn't mean that the younger generation coming up doesn't have good ideas, right? It's trying to find that balance. Because sometimes us, the younger generation, y'all know we all been there at one point. We all say, hey, Greg, I think we can do it this way. Greg co-signing with me. Right.
yeah,
And then we sometimes don't want to listen to the Kona Hills of the world, because what we gonna immediately say? Man, that dude
yeah,
trying to keep
yeah,
us
yeah,
where we at, man.
yeah.
But that's me. That's my soapbox on it.
Nah,
Did there's a lecture I did on that very similar subject, and essentially title is not going to detail it. Basically, the title was "Be Wise of Your Wise Counsel."
pretty deep. Be wise, hear wise counsel. But then I could take you down some rabbit holes too. You know what I mean? Because again, listening to a fool, right? that you consider that your wise counsel. It'll take you right into a deep hole that you can't get out of. I mean, again, leaders on this call, and I refer to all of you as leaders, is I said one thing that you may not have caught. I talked about active listening, right? Because and what we didn't get into was trust and communication a lot. Now, as leaders, we have to build those two things within our subordinate organizations and our grand organizations, trust and communication. Without those two things, every relationship fails. But that active listening, right? It's not always about me. Have a tentative ear. We learn that in the second degree. But what is it to have a tentative ear? Is to be an active listener, right? Listen before you speak. Before you speak. And it's such a hard lesson, and we always forget it because we're so quick to get it out. Our humanistic side will just say, let's just spew out what we want to say first. Like when somebody's grieving, listen. You don't have to speak. Just listen. When one of your members is grieving or hurting or in a situation, just listen. Now you'd be surprised at how much you hear if you listen. And then sometimes just listening will make it much better for the individual or individuals. So just be an active listener. I just want to impart that on you guys. There's nothing else as we walk away from this call here in short. Be an active listener in all that we do, especially in leadership, right? And then you build that trust by being an active listener, and then people will want to come and talk to you. When you say I have an open door policy, they believe it. But you have to build that trust, and you have to establish that communication piece in order for that to happen organically. What else, brothers and companions? What else do we have?
I know going on Sean's statements, as a grandmaster, especially in my year, my mentor was a past grandmaster, and I looked at him because of the way he governed and everything like that. But like you say, when you actually look at what they're doing, he basically got me to the point where he said, "Hey, you're doing a great job. Now you in the seat." But then he was trying to steer me to do things the way he wanted to do. The way
Yeah.
like I'm gonna revitalize his administration. But I realized, I said, well, got to step back off of this. So I had called a meeting of all the past grandmasters, and I let them know, yes, you have your past grandmaster council,
Mhm.
but my advisor is going to be my grand secretary. He had served 20 grandmasters. Each grandmaster in the jurisdiction of West Virginia served 2 years. 2 times 20,
40,
that's
yeah.
40 years. So
Yeah.
who's the best advisor?
Yeah, no doubt.
I had to step back and listen to the man that actually been there and that was giving me the truth and not trying to relive their administration through my administration.
Yeah.
So that's why my administration was a little bit better than theirs. It wasn't great because I was in the turmoil of the shrine, but
Yeah.
I wasn't fighting the shrine.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, I listened to wise counsel that was definitely giving me wise counsel. So, yes, that tentative ear is something, and observation is something that you really need to pay attention to in leadership.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's important. It's important. And I know today ain't a sexy topic, right? We want to talk about some deep dive and we'll get into some of the grief stuff, but we wanted to focus for the first 6 months or so just on leadership and education because we overlook those things. Like I said, these aren't sexy topics, right? And that's okay for some. But for me as a leader, I'm always like, how can we learn? What can we learn today to apply to something else tomorrow? Like tomorrow, I start a brand new job and I'm being hired for that job because the culture is broken in that job. I'm being hired for that job because they saw leadership resonated in my resume. And so I'm just being very transparent with you guys. So I'm going in tomorrow thinking about things like keeping the main thing the main thing. That's the first thing I'm gonna ask them. Everybody in the call center, hey, what's the main thing? Because we got to keep the main thing, right? So it is all good. All right, Mr. Coney here, we thank you for getting on, sir. I appreciate you. So look forward to seeing you in the future.
You roll. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. What's up, Trey?
I think the one thing that everybody's been saying over and over, and is true, as you said it, Sean said it, is listening. You know, a lot of times we just don't listen, right? I can remember when I was a master mason, when I came in and when I became worship master, that the past masters in the Lord's Cup told me, look, you got to be able to listen to everybody as well, you know, as well as work with everybody, right? So they told me, you should go ahead and meet with the past man, especially the older ones, and talk to them, right? And I've always taken that same concept going up the line. Even when I was supervisor in my job, you always gotta listen. You don't always have to do what they say do, but at least listen to them or get them to believe you listening to them, right? What do we do now? Every time, and all of us on here who's been a leader, people question and challenge everything you do, right? Because they want to compare it to their year. Like Sean just said, you can't compare something that you did 1970 to 2025. It doesn't make sense. But we always do it that way, right? You gotta look, you gotta evolve. And that's the one thing, being in leadership, you gotta have tough skin. Cause everybody gonna beat you up, right? Now,
Yep.
we are the leaders, you're in line. Why do I need to tell you what to do when you know what to do, right? That always irritates the hell out of me. Why do I got to tell you to do something? If you good at it, take care of that for me. Why do I got to tell you to do it? That's my pet peeve, right? If you got a certain line around you, a certain group of individuals, that means they all got a talent and skill set to do something. Just take care of it. I don't need to take, if you got a problem, let's talk about it. But if I get to the point I see you trying to sabotage me, I'm going to put it all on my shoulders. Sean have gotten on me, Rob and Eddie, I'm going to go ahead and take care of myself. Why? Because I done been down that road before. But I'm just saying, everybody said it. You got to listen. And we don't listen anymore because why? We know everything.
Yeah. I mean, I even equate it to, you came to my first session as a Grand Commander and on the inside, man, I was scared as hell because I had never done it at that level. And when all the eyes are on you and you making all those decisions, you got to really be at a different state. You got to be in a different state of mind. Like if you cocky and arrogant, you're going to just botch that up. But, I think it went well, but we were able to do it as a collective. It wasn't an individual effort. And so I had to really eat my own words and take my own advice and really talk to my wife and talk to Trey. I talked to Sean before and, hey, just just glean some things from what they were doing. And then I remember going to trade session and take some things away from what they were doing and make our session as smooth as possible. We got some things to work on, but again, I said continuous learning, leaders. You have to be a continuous learner. You can't get to a point where you say, I got this. I got this. You're done. I mean, if you get to that point, like Lou was saying, you're done. Like, I don't even want to be in a room with you because you're dangerous. And I said it again. You know what I mean? So again, man, I like the frankness of the discussion. I want to hear from a couple other people. We got some other people on here. Quinn, I know you've been in high positions. Eddie, I know you've done a whole bunch.
And
Yeah,
we even
wanna-
got the deputy grand high priest on it.
oh yeah, he on here. You
He's
know he
getting
ain't quiet.
exposed right now, but he dropped in.
Okay, okay. I know he ain't quiet, but he gonna give his opinion. I love that. So give it. Quinn, what you got, man? I know you
Absolutely.
Dr. Randall, I'm gonna start off and say that when you started, it reminded me of being a servant leader, which I think is a great style. I had a question for Clarence. You from Baltimore, D.C. area? I can tell with the accent. I was born and raised in West Baltimore.
I'm from East Side, sir. East Side. Good to meet you.
Always a pleasure, yes, sir. But just it's on leadership, doctor. But what I've noticed in the chapter, it appears that our leaders are there just to get the title. Like they're not there to work, and it causes the chapter to get stagnant, and brothers aren't as engaged as they should be. So I don't have an answer to it, but it's kind of question. What can we do in the chapter to kind of break that cycle?
Well, I'm gonna tell you what my mentors told me. First of all, you got to put yourself in a position to change it. And that's not an easy, and that's not a perfect science. And if you've done nothing else, you watched me put myself in a position to change it. You watched me get ridiculed. You watched me be spat on and talked about, but continuously climb back out of this hole. There's some narrative in the chat from our deputy grand high priest. Yeah, the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. Absolutely. You have to put yourself in a position to change it, because once we talk about it from the sideline, there's nothing that's going to happen. There's nothing that's going to happen. We have to be in a position to change it. And if anything, I've tried to put myself in a position to change it. And once I've been put in certain positions, I've been able to bring a lot of people along to affect that change, because again, it's about the exclusive we and not the inclusive I. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. And Q, I would like to add to that, and even going into saying, with that, right, you got to be ready for, because when you assume that mantle to go with your peers, with your companions to change it, right, you're going to start to have a little bit of self-doubt. But what it makes me think about is when you start to walk those veils and you do that, right, your companions with you as you come through should be telling you, hey, look, when God calls you to do it, to put you in the position to do it, he's not necessarily calling you because you're already qualified. God will qualify you for the call to do it, right? And then put companions around you, just like we have right here, to help you do it, right? You won't be on that island alone. It may feel like it at first. Sometimes you be like, good Lord, what did I just get into? But then you have to trust. And that's what took me back to the veils and everything you was talking about, Q, because it does exist. But what did we learn walking through those veils? Each time you had a sign to reassure you about where you were headed on your journey, even if nobody else believed it. Even if, well, how do I know you was the one supposed to be changing it? Well, throw that rod on the ground, right? It's going to turn into a serpent. Pick it back up by the tail, right? Assuring you of, I called you. You have been called by the creator to move through it, right? Put your hand in, leprosy, come back in, it's clear, right? Just reassuring your faith as you move through trying to affect change, right? And it's a big challenge sometimes, but as long as you got a group, and I don't know about y'all, but this is what I think is the hardest thing about moving with your group sometimes. Sometimes if you miss that one person that you thought was headed the same trajectory as the rest of the team and you miss it, right? That's when you start to have some leadership problems in the chapter, amongst the membership, any job, right? You start to, and for me, that's always been one of the biggest challenges to decipher, right? How do you genuinely know that everybody that started with you really wants to see change, right? And is not trying to be that person looking for just the next title.
Absolutely.
And Sean, just to tag in on that, one way that you will know is when they honestly tell you the truth. Because when You get sometimes you get the ones that's in your circle. They don't continue patting on the back. Hey, doing a great job, doing a great job. But I want that one to tell me, hey, great man, you screwed this one up. Hey, however, hey, let's talk about this because again, well, we see what's going on in the world today, and individuals surround themselves with those what we call the yes men. Oh man, you could be a truly horrible leader. But when you get those ones that tell you the truth, like Dr. Raul was talking about, he was talking about that continual learning. Hey, you're learning to adapt. You're willing to change to those situations in there. And I know it's a challenge because I teach leadership. And when I'm in there with a lot of the students, first of all, they look at what's going on in the world today, where you have a leader that won't admit mistakes. And believe it or not, I've been in room with individuals that literally said, nope, never admit your mistake. And I said, man, wow. I said, man, that's very dangerous. That's very dangerous because again, you're not willing to confirm that. Even though you made a mistake, you're just going to continue going on with that. But it goes back to the part, communication, listening. And one thing I always use, especially when I put that uniform on, I ask the soldier, will you listen to me or did you hear me?
Active listening.
And how they respond, that was back in my old days when I had that uniform on. I put them in the front leader rest position and all the other good stuff on how they responded. But again, it was just out of the fun side of the house. But it was a lesson on part of that. Again, because it's key thing that we keep doing and we keep. I know, and also, Sean, I like to tag in again too. Then I'm gonna shut up. You learn from. You said it earlier. You learn from bad leaders. Yes, you do. You truly learn from bad leaders. Quick scenario. I had a leader. He was very horrible. I'm telling you, this individual was a horrible person. 5 years later, the roles were reversed. I'm now in charge, and this individual, and it was so funny. Actually, it was so scary to that individual because he thought that Greg Pace was going to treat him the same way that he treated me. But I pulled him inside my office. I said, no. But I actually told him, I said, I learned from you. I learned what not to do. And I think that lesson that I communicated to him, it hurt him the most because it just let him know that, hey, yeah, guys, you was a bad guy, but you taught me something, what not to do. Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of a segue for leaders on this call. I teach class. I teach leadership continuum. I just taught the HR class last week, HR management. And what I share with them, I get them an extra tool for the tool bag. And this is the 4 laws of combat, but I phrase it as the 4 laws of combat in business because this is a unilateral understanding. First one is cover and move. That's pretty simple. But as we cover and move, if we think about the military side of it, the cornerstones of effectiveness and gunfighting tactics, right? We have to cover the move so everybody is safe. It's a core. It's about teamwork. It's about the exclusive we and not the inclusive I. Every team member must collaborate. They all have a job to do and they have to move succinctly. But we also have to keep it simple, leaders. Keep it simple, right? Don't make it overcomplicated. Simplify so that everybody understands because everybody understands that we're on the same page. But then what does that tell us? Next thing we got to prioritize and execute. What are the most important things? Remember, I just said a few minutes ago, keep the main thing the main thing. Prioritize and execute. Even the most exceptional battlefield leaders can take only tactical or one problem at a time. You can only solve one thing at a time. So what's the most important thing? And then we go down this list. And then lastly is my favorite, decentralized command. Decentralized command means everybody leads. We talked about that. I don't know how many leaders on this call have already said, from Griff to Greg to Sean. Everybody, even Owen kind of said, hey, think about this. Everybody has input. If everybody has input, a team that relies solely on one senior leader, like Lou was talking about, that's dangerous, right? That one leader makes decisions. We're seeing that leader right now leading our nation and our leader. Decisions will struggle, execute effectively. Things will struggle, right? Similarly, a team of individuals working independently without a unified effort is doomed to fail, right? So those are the 4 laws of combat in business. Gentlemen, just another tool to put in your tool bag. Let's say extra credit. We'll call it extra credit for this lecture. But again, this is something I tell the district deputies. I tell all of our guys in our jurisdiction when they talk to me, First thing I tell them when we get into leadership is the 4 laws of combat. That's the first conversation we have, because then that establishes a baseline. It gives them a basis on what they need to do and how they should be looking at stuff. So Quinn, that's kind of back to what you were asking right there, the 4 laws of combat, implementing those things, right? Cover and move, prioritize and execute, keep it simple, and then most importantly, decentralized command. This is not an autocratic society, it's a democratic society. And there's this distinct difference. So we got a few more minutes, leaders. Again, it's just a few of us, but this is gonna go up on YouTube, so there'll be hundreds of people that go back and watch it. I will let Greg tell you his salutations, but I thank you again for the ones that took out their time today to get on here, and hopefully we can all, like I tell my students, we should be able to walk away from this conversation and take something back to our organizations, but most importantly, walk away from this conversation having learned something. And if we learn something from the day, then that means we were effective leaders today. And then now that effective leadership tactics that we learned today, we can take back to our troops, speaking, and then go from there. Greg, you got anything?
Yeah, just once again, definitely thanks everyone for taking your time. What it is, one of the things I definitely want you to take away from this, and we all alluded to it, is communication. We learn from each other. As leaders, when you have a forum like this, we can talk through through challenges and things like that. That's what give you some of those bright ideas to how to go back out and how to fix things. So definitely thanks, sir.
Yes, sir. Shaw, you got anything, sir?
I'm a yield because even though we small
Yeah.
today, I know we got, Robert, Johnny, Derek. I see Eddie on here. What y'all got? Before we proceed to close, I appreciate it. I'm a yield and hear from some of these other great companions on here. It's awesome as always. I look forward to what we're gonna do next.
Yeah. We'll talk. If you could stay on afterwards, Greg and I
Yeah,
have something we
absolutely.
want to chop it over to you about.
Robert, Fred, we know you probably can only talk very briefly or drop it in the chat. Robert, y'all got anything? Johnny, Derek, Eddie?
Here's Robert. So one of the things that I was able to glean from this conversation, and thank you for inviting me and having me to have a moment to speak, hearing about adaptive leaders, being able to figure out, hey, this method is not working. Let's try something different. Let's also seek wise counsel. And I kind of alluding to what Coach Lewis shared about being wise about your wise counsel. That was very important. As I sit in the East in my blue house, I am seeking that wise counsel, and I am now ensuring that I am seeking wise counsel that is actually wise so that I can lead effectively. And so this was an excellent opportunity for me to hear some of these great tools that I received today. And so I really want to say thank you for that. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to have a voice here.
No, I appreciate you, sir. Thank you. Eddie, I don't know if you're in a position to speak. But I know you dropped some jewels in the chat already. Johnny, Derek, you guys have any parting words of wisdom or things that you gleaned from today's conversation?
Yeah, because this ain't, as Greg and with Doctors Randall and Pace put it together, it's not one-sided team. It's not a lecture. We want
No.
everybody to understand everybody's opinion is value. You learn something from everybody. So by all means, if you got something and you're in a position, go ahead and drop it. That's what we here for.
Yeah, definitely. And if not, that's okay. Your silence is acceptance, but we definitely most importantly, just appreciate y'all again coming out. We value your time. That is the most valuable. People felt so. I just taught a class on effective management of a meeting, right? Meeting management. And what people fail to realize is we waste a lot of time. And when we waste the most valuable asset that we have at our disposal that we can't buy or barter for, then that turns people off from the organization. And if you think about the failure point of our organization right now, it's because we waste people's time, because we don't give them a reason to come to the meetings, number one. That's first and foremost. And then when they come to the meeting, we waste their time arguing about mundane stuff that could be dealt with in an officers meeting. So again, time management is another thing that's another topic we could have added in there, but it was focusing on truth. So I just kind of want to keep it there, but I just want to kind of give you guys that piece of it. Time management. When you have a meeting, leaders, are we doing an agenda? You don't have to answer. But if you're doing a meeting, to have an effective meeting, you need to have an agenda. Why do you think it's in your constitutions? All of our constitutions have a sample agenda, don't they? I'll wait. The answer is yes. I get thumbs up, hopping across the screen. The answer is yes. For that very reason. The tools are already there. We just got to use them. Tools are ineffective if we don't use them. They get rusty. And when they get rusty, they don't work anymore. So this was just an opportunity for us to oil our tools today. and we oiled our tools today. And then we got some other tools too. So again, I don't force anybody to have any words, but we appreciate the ones that gave input, and blessings to you and your families. And if there's nothing else, gentlemen, the time is ironically 3, 5, and 7. How ironic is that? How ironic is that? We finished at 3, 5, and 7. It's all allegory, right? You see how that worked out? See how God do? We started at 3 or 1, right? We technically started at the 9th hour when Jesus died. I'm gonna stop because we're gonna go in a whole nother lecture. We're gonna go into a whole nother lecture. But we finished at 3, 5, and 7, so we appreciate y'all. Y'all welcome to stay and chat. But we're not gonna hold you any longer, man. Let you get back to the evening games. We're gonna stay around and talk. I know Sean, myself, and Greg will have some conversation, but y'all will, feel free to stay back and chat. But you guys are released from this transitory existence, as
Be
they
safe,
say.
everybody. God bless.
Yes,
Make sure
sir.
you let your folks know to check out the recording.
All right.
Yeah, it'll be on
Happy
there.
holidays, all.
Yes, sir. We
Same
won't
here.
see you guys again until January. The invite will go out in December.
Okay.
Yep, every other month.
If I'm not added, definitely add me to the email list.
Go ahead and drop your email in the chat. Let me open that now, and then I'll add you to my personal distro.
Yep. Thanks for coming out, Coach.
I was happy to see Price get on. He's one of my companions.
Wow.